The V10. It creates an unmistakable harmony that erupts from its cylindrical pipes and travels through the medium of air to vibrate our eardrums. It is inherently flawed by the laws of physics, two banks of 5 cylinders in a perpetual fight against each other, trying to rip itself apart. But with engineering, it somehow just works. In 1997, BMW's motorsport division would begin a journey into mastering the art of the V10, with one goal in mind: putting their V10s on the podium in the pinnacle of motorsports, Formula One. What would emerge from this expensive endeavor was infrastructure, tooling, and processes to not just build record-setting V10s for Formula One, but also a V10 for a road car wearing an M badge. It wasn't a reworked lower trim engine with higher outputs. It had no lineage or connection to the series production engines of the past. It was a dawn of a new era, an era that now revved above 8,000 RPM from the factory. In this episode of Explain, we will detail the journey of how BMW's quest to take down Ferrari in F1 birthed the most infamous sedan of all time. The BMW of today has no interest in Formula One. But in the 80s, they built a turbocharged F1 engine that can be regarded as one of the most powerful engines ever put into an F1 car. It was the brainchild of Paul Roche, technical director of BMW Motorsport, and it was a fascinating piece of engineering, a 1.5-liter dual overhead cam 4-cylinder engine based on a common iron block architecture that made 1,300 horsepower and qualifying trim of 5.5 bar of boost pressure from the Triple K turbo. It was a force to be reckoned with in the Brabham BT52 designed by Gordon Murray, propelling Brazilian driver Nelson Piquet to a Formula One World Championship in 1983. The power of the M12 did come at a cost. The turbo lag was essentially an on and off switch. It consumed fuel like no other, and at nearly 1,000 horsepower per liter, the engine was pushed to its structural limits and reliability was concerning. As other teams quickly caught up through the years, BMW Motorsport withdrew as an engine supplier from F1 at the end of 1986. With a world championship, 9 wins, 15 pole positions, and 14 fastest laps under its belt with the M12. And the subsequent ban on turbocharged engines put the nail in the coffin for BMW's Formula One efforts for a decade. Rumblings of BMW re-entering the arena of Formula One were solidified in September of 1997. Paul Roche and Gordon Murray's collaboration on the McLaren F1's S70 V12 gave promise to a new engine for Formula One, and despite having a free choice of the number of cylinders, all the manufacturers eventually ran naturally aspirated V10 engines under the 3000cc FIA regulation for F1. The V10 design was an engineering nightmare, 2 banks of 5 cylinders that aren't naturally balanced like a V12, putting harmonics into the chassis. The ideal bank angle of a V10 is 72 degrees, since a V10 fires 10 times during 720 degrees of crankshaft rotation for a 4-stroke cycle. But the 72-degree bank angle made the engine taller, giving it a higher center of gravity. Ferrari tackled this problem by using a 90-degree bank angle V10 on the Tipo 049, giving it a lower center of gravity, helping handling characteristics and tuning out the harsher harmonics with an endless engineering budget at their disposal. The first BMW F1 V10, the E41, was ready in the year 2000 with an output of 810 horsepower in the Williams BMW FW22. And placed Williams third in the Constructors' Championship, behind McLaren and Ferrari, which was promising for a company 10 years behind in F1 experience. The second iteration, the BMW P80 V10, had a 90-degree bank angle just like Ferrari, and it was lighter by 12 kilograms, a lower center of gravity, and rev higher to 18,000 RPM and made 880 horsepower. And in the Williams FW23, it won 4 races, making it an improvement, but still placing third in the Constructors' Championship.
Juan Pablo Montoya, you were going very well then, and then a lot of smoke and the engine.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed because it was a very good race, to be honest. It was a bit too great in the start and went straight through. But, it's quite, everything experience, and I'm pretty happy with the result.
The P82, the P83, and P84 were incremental changes, making them lighter and more powerful, but Ferrari and Michael Schumacher were on a generational run, winning back-to-back drivers' championships for half a decade. The hundreds of millions poured into Formula One by BMW resulted in no driver or constructor wins, but from it came an F1 foundry built for light alloy castings with maximum precision, an in-house electronics department containing a prototype production facility, and a team of engineers at their disposal. This would lay the groundwork for a new project, bringing F1 engineering into a road car. It takes a dedicated team to create something great, whether it's a car, an idea, or something as simple as dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. Factor takes the stress out of meal planning, which for me, who obviously likes good food, is a game changer, especially since I spend so much time creating and editing these videos. Factor frees up my time that would be spent sitting in traffic, at the grocery store, and then preparing meals, and they do it all for me sent directly to my door. Their ready-to-eat meals are fresh and never frozen, expertly crafted, and with 35 different weekly options of meals, there's enough variety for anyone. My personal favorite is the spinach and mushroom chicken thighs with the Parmesan white wine sauce, absolutely superb. And if you want options like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter, broccolini, asparagus, they all will happily oblige. So just head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50337SPEED to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50337SPEED at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Life can get pretty hectic sometimes, but Factor makes it a little bit easier. During the F1 development years, the replacement to the E39 Chassis 5 series was underway. David Arcangeli, under the guidance of BMW Chief of Design Chris Bangle, designed a revolution to the 5 series rather than an evolution, a big risk with the potential of lots of reward. Only days after the new E65 series design was greenlit by the board, Arcangeli died of leukemia. What he would miss out on was seeing his design become the next M5. In secret, BMW developed a new V10, dubbed the S85 V10 for the E60. It was more than just inspired by its F1 program. It would use advancements learned in the crucible of F1. The V10 had a 90-degree bank angle, just like the P8X series of engines, to lower the center of gravity. It used an Alusil alloy 2-piece block with a bed plate like the E41 V10 from the early years for rigidity. The crankshaft was nitrocarburized, a technology learned in the F1 program, and the connecting rods were steel versus titanium, and the pistons were cast aluminum units with coated skirts from the carbon coating program, and produced 12-to-1 compression. A dual overhead cam design with 4 valves per cylinder with titanium alloy exhaust valves to withstand the heat was an obvious choice, and carried over double Vanos technology with 60 degrees of intake variation and 37 degrees of exhaust variation. 10 individual throttle valves control the air supply, hidden by an air intake plenum for each cylinder bank. The exhaust manifolds were hydroformed with an equal length 5-into-1 collector. It made over 507 metric horsepower at 7,750 RPM and revved all the way to an 8,250 RPM red line. The over-square bore and stroke configuration didn't give it copious amounts of torque, but with 7 tightly spaced gear ratios in the Getrack 247 SMG transmission, it didn't need it. The new M5 was quickly followed by an M6 coupe. The M6 weighed a tiny bit less than the M5, but both were heavy executive German cars when compared to the E46 M3 and other brands like the Porsche 911. They weren't meant for the Nürburgring, they were meant for the Autobahn.
188, 190 miles per hour, 92, 194, and now we have to slow down and see how fantastic those brakes are.
With the M driver's package, it could reach a still restricted speed of 305 kilometers an hour, and unrestricted, it could touch 320 kilometers an hour. In its debut, the M5 was the fastest sedan you could buy. The M5 and M6 were the final boss of German over-engineered machines, and over time, the concept of F1 tech for the road proved to be an expensive endeavor for not just its owners, but BMW themselves. During the 4-year, 80,000 kilometer warranty period, many M5s and M6s incurred issues, leading to updates throughout its lifespan and many warranty claims for engines and transmissions. The high-pressure oiling system for the variable valve timing in early production cars was known to fail, leading to a service bulletin to replace the internal line on the pump with an uprated unit. The oil pan was updated with a twin drain plug design for more complete drainage during oil change intervals. The Vanos solenoids were eventually upgraded to better units in 2006, but most expensive of all was a rod-bearing premature wear concern on the S85. The bearing clearance from the factory was extremely tight and designed for a high zinc content engine oil. But with a recommended oil change interval of 15,000 miles or 24,000 kilometers, the oil would break down prematurely from degradation and fuel contaminants from the combustion process, leading to premature wear. This issue was exacerbated by oil manufacturers reducing the amount of zinc additive in oils to protect the catalytic converter, which created a recipe for disaster on an engine with such tight tolerances. Simply put, as the cars aged and depreciated, they became enticing on the second-hand market for their F1 drivetrains. But servicing them properly became so expensive that they became just as infamous as early 2000s Ferraris when it came to the ownership experience. The legacy of the S85 V10 could have been even more groundbreaking than it already was. That is, if BMW Motorsports followed through with their CSL prototypes in 2009. This new engine was dubbed the S85 V10. It was stroked from 5 liters to 5.5 liters with a massive one-piece carbon intake plenum and made an estimated 600 brake horsepower with an 8,750 RPM redline. The CSL replaced the SMG3 with the E9X M3 dual-clutch transmission, which was light years faster. On the M5 CSL, it had a carbon roof that shed 100 pounds, and used the 167M wheels that were forged and lighter than the 166M wheels. Altogether, it shaved over 20 seconds off its Nürburgring lap time, and then BMW went quiet. No concept, no trickle down of parts like the carbon intake, no anything. In the grand scheme of BMW M5s, the E60 generation is a clear outlier. It was too outlandish to be considered a businessman's express. It was a Ferrari-esque attempt to use F1 as a marketing ploy to sell cars. even using the Porsche 911 and Lamborghini Gallardo as benchmarks for comparison in official documentation. The F10 M5 was more civilized, more business, faster, and laid the framework for BMW's future. But the E60 explored the what-ifs. What if an F1-derived V10? What if an 8,250 RPM redline? What if rod bearings were a maintenance item? Today, BMW has no real interest in competing in F1, but I remember when they did, and the world hasn't been the same since.